Ending of the house, part 1 down below. Before Randy and the children got up, I had already left. I drove the last 15 miles to work, stopping along the way for coffee and a donut. Though I had almost no evidence, the thought had crossed my mind that something might be happening. When I couldn't get her in New York, what was she doing all those nights? I hope that's all it was. I know she'd started drinking much more and assumed that they were going out to clubs and hanging out. Like usual, I made dinner on Monday night and didn't see Randy until late at night, right before the kids went to bed. After giving them both a kiss, she returned to the den. Just after 2 a.m., I swear I saw my bedroom door open. But I must have dreamed it because I saw no one when I was half asleep. Similar to Monday, I left before Randy woke up. I asked her in my note to let me know who would be watching the kids while she was in New York. I wrote, "Don't worry, the kids and I will be okay. When you return, see you or not." It was just after 6 when I got home and Carol was cooking dinner. I went in the living room where the kids were watching a Disney movie and gave them all hugs and kisses. As I walked up to my room to change, I said hello to Carol. I looked around, kind of expecting a note of some sort, but I just shrugged my shoulders and headed downstairs. I took a Corona out of the fridge and got to work setting the table. "Carol, you eating with us tonight?" I responded. "If you want me to stay I can, but I'm really not that hungry." I walked over to the oven and told her, "Don't worry about it, the kids and I can take care of ourselves. If you want to leave, I can finish up for you." She closed the oven door and replied, "That's okay, the pot roast is almost done anyhow. Can I ask you a personal question, Steve?" she asked, sounding almost apprehensive. I responded flippantly, "Sure sis, what do you want to know?" "You two okay? I mean, are you and Randy doing okay?" She said. "Why, has she said something?" "Not in so many words, but she seems pretty down and she doesn't mention you or the kids very often anymore." I started to feel a bit warm, so I replied, "But I bet if you asked her about her book, she could tell you line by line what she's written." Carol noticed. "Well, I told her she should back off a bit and take care of business at home, if you're wondering. I think she's got bright lights and dollar signs in her eyes if you ask me." I'd had enough and had invited the kids to dinner after saying, "Couldn't tell you, because it's been quite a while since I've seen her eyes close up." Before I advised them to eat first and chat later, their motor mouths were moving at 100 miles per hour. Carol gave me a big hug and said, "If you need an ear, I'm only a phone call away," as she walked out. "I'm fine, it's your sister I'm worried about." Tuesday night was so dull that I turned on the late-night gossip program. You know, the ones with all the gorgeous people in far-off locations wearing tight two-piece outfits and attempting to appear like me and you. As I took the last sip of my beer, I thought to myself, I wish I had just half their money. The concert traveled from South Beach, Florida, to Madrid, Spain, and then to one of New York's hottest nightclubs. The sight of what I saw next would have made me choke on it on the way down, so I was very glad I'd finished that last swallow. My beautiful wife was dancing on the TV, locking lips with a hot guy. She didn't appear to care that his hands were on her butt. They were panning in on a famous starlet who was standing right behind them, so it was a split-second shot. I was taken aback. Hell, I was furious, but I could see that scene 10 more times because of contemporary technology. As you can see, our cable box has a TiVo built in. I succeeded in capturing the image and storing it on my cable box. In this manner, Randy might relive her 3 seconds of fame if she so desired. For myself, I'd had enough. Still, when I called her phone, it went straight to voicemail, which is strange. Not a shred of sleep did I get that night. When I looked at the bedside clock at 4:15 in the morning, I was still wide awake and still arguing with myself over how I was going to handle it. I got up at 5:30, showered, and went downstairs to brew coffee. I decided to start now as I knew I would need a lot of coffee to get through work today. Her mother arrived at 7, making sure that she was on time for once. I told her that I had prepared breakfast for the kids and her in the oven. She opened the oven to see pancakes and sausage patties staying warm, so I imagined she was grateful she didn't have to bake anything. "You must have gotten up early this morning," she said, fishing. "With Randy coming home, you'll probably want a little quiet time. You want me to watch the kids tonight?" She said. "Won't be necessary, as I don't think Randy and I will have any alone time tonight," I remarked as I picked up my lunch. I said, "Thanks for stopping by," as I turned to go. All day Wednesday, I felt extremely exhausted and irritable. I devoured my coffee and angrily confronted 2 merchants who had been running behind schedule. I had been irritated by lunch, and by 5 o'clock I was furious beyond belief. Fortunately, the drive home helped me relax a little, or else I'm not sure what I would have done. When I got home, her mom's car was still in the driveway, so perhaps dinner had started at least. She watched me go through the door while she talked on the phone. "Steve, it's Randy," she said as she gave me the telephone. "Honey, I missed my flight and the next one isn't until 10:30 tonight. I'm just going to stay an extra night and catch the first flight out tomorrow," she said to me. I responded sharply, "Well, you were probably dead tired after spending half the night out dancing. No wonder you missed your damn flight." "I wasn't out last night, I had a quiet night in my room," she responded. I said something like, "Randy, get a copy of TMZ from last night, watch it, and then tell me who you spent a quiet night with," and then I slammed the phone. I asked Ann, don't you think that went well? If you'll excuse me, I need to pack up Randy's crap. It'll take me a couple of hours. Just let me know where you'll want me to drop it before I get to your house. Steve, take a deep breath. You don't want to do this before you talk to Randy, do you? I replied to her as I was leaving the kitchen and entering the garage, and I wanted to do it last night at 11 when I watched it for the first time. Her lying to me just makes me want to do it that much more. So, like I said, I've got a lot to do tonight and not much time. After 22 bags and 4 boxes, it was finished. I packed her the iron and ironing board, so I guess I wasn't as careful as I should have been. Besides, it wasn't my clothing. Having secured the children securely and crammed my SUV to the brim, I set out to visit Randy's parents. The kids were thrilled because they believed we were coming on a visit. I met Randy's parents outside. When Ann brought the children inside, her father did nothing but wait until they were secure. What the hell's going on between the two of you? You got a damn burr under your saddle all of a sudden. Though I could sense his frustration, I refused to back down. Talk to your daughter. I've had it up to here with her crap and I'm not putting up with it any longer. If I can't get my old wife back, I'll let you deal with the new Randy. I'm done. In his fatherly, you've got to believe me voice, he asked, you can't believe she would cheat on you, do you? Wouldn't have 14 months ago, but too many things haven't added up, and after seeing what I did on national TV last night, I wouldn't put it past her. So if you don't mind, where can I dump her stuff? It took us half the time it took me to load it when we moved everything into their garage. I've got nothing against you and Ann, but I need you to make sure Randy doesn't come to the house tomorrow. I'm not going to change the locks, well not yet anyway, but I need some time to sort this out and she needs to get her story straight. Just tell her no lies this time. Tell her we can get together sometime this weekend and talk, but until then to stay the hell away from me. Even though he wasn't pleased, at least he understood that he couldn't make me change my decision. I picked up my children and left. I contacted Carol on the way home and asked for a big favor. Can you please watch the kids Thursday and Friday? I said. I thought Randy was coming home tonight. Long story, but the short of it, I need someone to watch the kids. Sure, no problem, Steve. I'll see you tomorrow morning just before 7. Thanks, girl. I really owe you one, I murmured, cutting the connection. It looks after the children, so what the devil do I do next? I drained the open bottle of wine in the refrigerator and cracked open a Miller after telling the kids that Mommy wouldn't be returning home until the weekend. I'm not sure why I looked at that 5-second clip twice more, but I think it was either to remind myself of what I'd done tonight or to rationalize it. Regardless of the reason, our marriage was in serious trouble. She was picked up at the airport by Randy's father. Where is Steve right now? May I ask? She inquired. He just said, he asked me to pick you up. Before realizing they were not going to her house, Randy continued talking endlessly about her vacation and how wonderfully the book was progressing. Dad, you missed my turn. No, I didn't. We're stopping at the house first, he responded. Dad, I told Steve I'd see him as soon as I landed. He remarked, he already knows about it, sweetheart, as they entered the driveway. As they entered, her mother was tugging at her hands while seated on the couch. Have a pleasant flight, my love, and questioned her. Randy said to her mother, it was all right, but I'm tired and want to go home and take a long bath. Doug, you told her without telling her, and questioned her spouse. Thought it might be best if we did it together. What in the world is happening? Could someone please let me know? I guess there is no easy way of saying this. Steve kicked you out of the house, honey, she was told by her mother. Jesus Christ, what a sob, doing it when I'm out of town. What the hell, he can't do that, it's my damn house for Christ's sake. And if he thinks he can keep me from my kids, he'd better think again, god damn it, Randy said, growing angrier by the word. She had no idea what would happen next. Doug approached Randy, who was now furious, and gave her a forceful slap across the face. Randy caressed the side of her face and realized that shocked was not even close to the feeling she was feeling. His wife yelled at him, Doug, me, that's all I've heard out of her mouth since I picked you up at the airport. I didn't allow that language in my house when you lived here, and the rules haven't changed since then. Dad, Steve's the one who's lost it, but if he thinks I'm going to take this lying down, he's got another thing coming, she was nearly shouting. Doug turned to the television and turned it on while keeping an eye on Ann. Randy, come here and sit yourself down. I think you need to see this. A single click on the remote caused TMZ to rerun. Doug slowed it to regular speed after fast-forwarding to the exact moment before the point he wanted her to watch. Her hand immediately rushed to her mouth upon seeing it. Her father played it 3 more times before she urged him to stop. This is why all your stuff is now in our garage. Steve saw it and went nuts. Dad, it's not what it looks like. It was just a friendly kiss. Randy, please stop talking to me like I'm one of your stupid friends, he begged, pausing on the image of her kissing him whole. And anyone with half a brain can see that this wasn't the first time you did a lip lock with him, he joked. Dad, he's just a friend, that's all. Married women in New York may do that with friends, but they sure as hell don't do that here. Your marriage is in the toilet and right now Steve has his hand on the lever. If I were you, sweetheart, I'd come up with some good answers for the hard questions he is going to ask you Sunday. And, for the love of God, don't give him that BS that it was just a friendly one-time kiss. That's how I interpret the events of that evening. Randy tried to call me, but I wasn't in the mood to talk, so I put all of my inquiries off until Sunday, hopefully, when I would be more composed. At least the remainder of the week went according to whatever normal now was. As the children grew more and more excited to see their mother on Sunday, Carol, not her mother, assumed responsibility for their supervision. They were wild during breakfast on Sunday morning. What they really wanted to know was, what time is Mom coming home? Not until you've finished your breakfast, I answered back. It goes without saying that after 5 minutes, their plates were empty. About 11:30, Randy and her mother showed up. The children showered her with kisses and hugs while chatting nonstop about their adventures while her absence. After approximately 20 minutes or so, I promised them they would see her after I had to chat to their mother. Randy and I sat in the living room while Anne led the children outside. She said, "It was nothing, Steve, I'm so sorry. On national television, on TMZ no less, everyone sees my wife cheating on me. Now I know why you were never in your hotel room when I called. Is he good in bed?" I inquired. "Steve, I didn't sleep with him. I've never cheated on you. I guess you and I have a different definition of cheating. Having a man, other than your husband, feeling you up at a public club comes under mine even if it isn't covered by yours." She uttered an irate, "How many times do I have to tell you I did not sleep with him? Maybe not this time, but probably next time from what I've seen." Following that conversation, we just sat there staring at one another, neither of us sure what to say next. "What do you want, Randy? I don't have a clue where you're coming from anymore. Hell, you haven't been a real wife to me in over a year, and it looks like everyone else is getting more action than I am. Steve, I still love you, but I can't go back to being little Susie homemaker anymore. I've got a new career and I'm loving it. I create stories that people love. I'm making more money than I could ever make as a teacher, and I'm meeting a different class of people I never would have here," she said while holding my hand and attempting to clarify what she thought of herself. I told her, "Well, at least I know where I stand. We can split things 50-50, but I'm going to battle you for full custody. I'll get the paperwork rolling and file as soon as I can to avoid interfering with your new life." "Steve, not a word I've uttered has reached your ears." She tried to take my hand and said, "I still want my job, but I also still love you and don't want a divorce. We could utilize the money I can likely make this year, roughly $200,000, to pay off the house or build a sizable nest egg. However, it would cost. You're locked up in the den when you're physically here, and I don't know you anymore. We haven't shared a kiss for well over a year, and each time we spend time together, I get the impression that you are eager for it to end so you can return to your annoying book. I can no longer live that way. Let's put a stop to this farce of a marriage so that you can resume your career as a published author and me, together with the kids, can return to our everyday lives." "I've got another solution," Randy stated, glancing at a notepad. "We go to counseling, have a trial separation, and rebuild our marriage. You would prefer a separation, I think. You may then act however you want and with whoever you please without fear of repercussions." "Steve, do you not believe in me?" Randy sat up straight and looked at me. "Not for the life of you. Do you still feel like you cheated on me? You must have been near a few times, but I doubt it. If we do this, it's with a signed written agreement and with an ending date of, say, 9 months. "Do I think you will?" "Definitely, the way we're headed," I said to a stunned Randy. An enraged Randy yelled at me, "Steve, it sounds like I'm signing a damn contract. Since we don't currently have a remarriage contract, you could be considered one. Either this way or I file next week. We can see if there's anything left to salvage and either build on that or just pull the plug." "All right, I'll agree, but we both need to come up with conditions and what is and is not acceptable behavior." "I agree, but I wasn't the one giving it up on national TV." Randy stood up and became furious, saying, "I didn't give it up. How many times do I have to tell you before you'll believe me? Will you take a polygraph and answer all my questions?" She replied, "In a heartbeat if that will lay your fears to rest." "Then I do believe you, but we still need conditions," they both said, listing more points they wanted to include in their agreement. I told her there were 2 things that were non-negotiable: once a week couples counseling and no sleeping with anyone, or, to put it another way, no bonding of any type outside the 2 of us. "Anything that you wouldn't do in front of the other falls under this category. You type it up and I'll sign it," she stated to me. "Other than that, is there anything else? Who's going to watch the kids during this time?" She started to reply, "If you want, I could move in the spare bedroom. Between Carol, my mom, and I, we'll take care of it. I'll get a place nearby." But I interrupted her. "The kids are going to have a hard enough time with this as it is, and it won't work with me either. You're either totally with me or out of here." The agreement was executed, notarized, and implemented after 2 days. Now my marriage rested on the words on a 10-page contract, and I wasn't sure it would last. Our first 4 or 5 sessions of therapy with Dr. Allen felt like something out of a horror film. There was a great deal of crying, yelling, and most importantly, back and forth accusation leveling. I was a jerk for attempting to stop her. I was insecure, envious of her, and I continued accusing her of cheating when there was no evidence to support my claims. Although I acknowledged that I preferred my previous life, I was ecstatic with her achievements. But her work habits had taken her so far away from the home. The children would constantly inquire if their mother still loved them. It knocked Randy down a notch or two. Both sides leveled charges of bonding and cheating. It's tiring chasing after two kids all day. I can't just throw a switch or switch gears when you come home and want to fool around. Randy, we haven't made love in over a year and a half, and if you're not getting it from me, tell me, where are you getting your needs met? She shot out at me. Steve, we sure as hell have fooled around in the last 12 months. Dr. Allen had to calm Randy down after she became enraged with me. Steve, that was uncalled for. Why don't we call it quits for this session since we have only 5 minutes left anyway? I've got an easy homework assignment for the two of you for next week, he remarked with a grin. I need you to write down 10 things you like about each other and the same number why the two should stay married. This should be a no-brainer for you two. I had never had an assignment as difficult as that one. It would have been easy 2 years ago, but nowadays I had trouble getting 7 items, of which I believe 2 were nearly identical. The session on Thursday did not go as planned. After gathering both of our lists, he gave them a cursory glance and placed them in the manila file that was on his desk. We exchanged a look before me speaking out. Puzzled, I remarked, aren't we going to go over them? He questioned, you two want to get back together? We almost nodded at the same moment. That put a solemn note on the rest of the session. Well, then, in 2 months we're going to repeat the same exercise and compare the results. If they are the same, my work is done, and you two can let the lawyers handle the rest. When things took another turn for the worse, it was after 4 months that I felt we were really moving forward and that I felt much more at ease. I had brought Randy's favorite flower, a single red rose, to Thursday's session as a sort of peace offering, but she didn't show up. Dr. Allen told me, Randy called to say something came up and she couldn't make it today. Is that rose for me? We continued the session and discussed how far we'd come and how Randy and I looked to be making wonderful strides these past 3 months. Dr. Allen said he'd see me next week and we said our goodbyes. How thoughtful, he added, trying to diffuse the situation knowing that I was not happy. Thursday and Friday night Carol appeared a little tense. She simply put the food on the table and went, which was very unusual of her. Caroline, is something wrong? I questioned her Friday before I left. No, nothing's wrong. I've just got a lot on my mind, that's all. I kissed her on the cheek and said, well, have a great weekend. You and your mom have been a godsend helping Randy and me work out our problems. Without you two, I don't know what I would have done. I watched her rush from the door, tears welling up in her eyes, get into her car, and drive away. I said to myself, I guess she doesn't get compliments very often. There truly was nothing good on Sunday night, so I was channel surfing and chose to watch one of the preempted normal episodes instead of the regular shows. As the cameras panned from one table to another, the beer I was swallowing suddenly went down the wrong way and then up through my nose. Randy was at the table, dressed to kill, on the arm of an older man with dark hair. It was a special fundraiser for something. All the pretty people were turning out. Producer Tony Arndt and his date Randy Moore were described in the picture's caption. Well, at least I now know why she missed this week's session. She had to return to New York to see Tony Guy. For the next 2 hours, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen as the audience bid on various items and the camera panned the tables. Tony, my new friend, went on vacation, and his statement told it all. He kissed Randy on the cheek and added, it's for a good cause, and I know just the little lady I'd like to take with me. Let's just say that the kids won't be watching cartoons in the living room tomorrow morning. You know what happens to a 48 inches HD flat screen television when it hits a partially filled glass beer bottle. I was so intoxicated on Sunday night that I passed out on the kitchen floor and didn't wake up until Carol woke me early on Monday. Steve, how are you doing? She helped me up and said, it's the television, putting her hand to her mouth as she noticed the glass all over the living room floor. I'll clean it up when I get home tonight, but don't let the kids in there, was all I said to her. I didn't like what I saw on the TV last night. She answered, Steve, don't worry about it, I'll clean it up. Carol, I said I'll clean up the mess myself, just leave it alone. Her expression said it all. Since she and her parents had been viewing the same thing, she was aware of what I had witnessed. Her father nearly lost it when Tony made that comment. Jesus Christ, I can only hope no one I know is watching this. Does that daughter of yours have crap for brains or what? I pulled up my yellow pages at work and checked under childcare. I had an urgent need for a nanny. I scheduled interviews with 4 people in less than 3 hours, and I assumed that at least one of them had a job. My selection had recently graduated from college and was pursuing an online master's degree. To me, Donna was the ideal 23-year-old, single, without a boyfriend. We agreed on Wednesday after Donna stated that she could begin right away because she truly needed the money. Carol cleared the living room glass, even though I warned her not to. When I got home, the TV was still there since it was too heavy for her. She inquired, you feeling better? Yes and no, I responded to her. Yes, that I can finally start a new chapter in my life, and no, because I'd never thought I'd have to. Carol, tell your mom I won't need either of you to watch the kids any longer. I've hired a nanny and she starts Wednesday. I'm taking off tomorrow to do a few things so you needn't come back. I really appreciate what you did for me and I'm going to miss you, and I know the kids will too. Steve, Randy wants you to call her tonight as soon as you got home, she stated to me. She says to tell you it's not what it looked like. With her it never is it, Carol? Before leaving to call, she reminded me once more, but I ignored her, so what was the point? I opened a new bank account on Tuesday and moved half of our savings into it. I installed the new locks I got for the house this afternoon. I gave my kids a to-do list and took them out for their favorite meal, pizza. I informed them that Donna would be looking after them going forward and ended it there. On Wednesday, Donna arrived early and I gave her a tour of the house. I handed her a key and instructed her to never allow anyone, regardless of who it might be, inside the house. I told her I'd give her a call at lunch and provided her my work and phone numbers. I was relieved to finally be home on Wednesday since it was difficult for a variety of reasons. At 6:30, as we were cleaning up after Donna's delicious supper, she finally said something. A woman named Randy called 3 times and was surprised when I told her who I was. She left you 2 long voice messages when I told her that I was instructed not to let anyone into the house. I walked Donna to her car and said, "Thanks, have a nice evening, and I'll see you in the morning." I deleted both messages without giving them a second thought. Thursday proved to be yet another unsatisfactory day. Everyone had anticipated receiving everything yesterday, and production was running behind schedule. Upon arriving home at nearly 6:30, the kids were agitated. He had struck me. She had kept changing the TV and other trivial matters that, as usual, required attention. I told Donna to go home and I'd take care of the dishes. She claimed the kids enjoyed the hot tuna casserole she had made, so I gave her $2.20 and instructed her to fill up her gas tank. Donna, I should have remembered to factor in gas for our plan. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help if you need it. You'll need more than 1 tank of petrol to drive the kids to and from school. She grinned, thanked him, gave the kids a hug, and drove off. So, what are your thoughts on your new nanny, guys? I inquired. She's pleasant, but Aunt Carol is missed. Will she be returning? I said to them, not now, but we'll visit her and Granny later. All right, who wants dessert? Immediately put an end to their queue and a session. I turned on my phone after the kids went to bed, even though I'd made a point of turning it off as soon as I got home from work because I wasn't in the mood to talk to Randy or her mother, at least not right now. I deleted the 2 messages I received, one from Randy asking me to call her immediately, and the other from Dr. Allen asking me if I wanted to attend the session the following Thursday. I was using a sleep aid now instead of alcohol to fall asleep, and if I didn't, I would just lie there with my mind racing in a million different directions. I was beginning to unravel, so drugs were now a part of my life. Dr. Allen entered the room while Randy was seated on the couch and staring at her watch. Looks like Steve isn't coming, she replied. No matter, there are a few things I'd like to discuss with you alone anyway. I know why he's not here, and I've tried to call him a couple of times, but he's not taking my calls, she responded. We'll talk about that later, but I am fully aware of it. I would like to go back in time for a moment, if that is okay, he continued, pulling out a file. You 2 came to some sort of arrangement when you first started having issues, didn't you? Yes, we sat down and worked out a schedule for both of us to follow. Did it succeed? I don't understand, he just seemed to get angrier and more distant as the months went on, she said, adding, but I guess Steve didn't think so. It was functioning pretty well, in my opinion. I was meeting all of my deadlines and doing everything on time. Steve was watching the kids and preparing dinner so you could write. Yes. Did you see anything about dating evenings in there? I guess we were supposed to get together either Friday if set for some alone time, she responded. And I guess it didn't happen all the time, but stuff just kept getting in the way. I never skipped them intentionally. Okay, so how frequently did the 2 of you get together? Randy remarked, I don't know, maybe once a month, and she saw Dr. Allen scowl. For a while, everything went crazy. I was unable to think because of writer's block. I suppose I ought to have distanced myself from it for a while, but I had promised them something, and I wanted to prove to them that I could be trusted. He looked at his watch and said, okay, now I've got a little test for you. I need you to tell me the last sentence of your latest story. In about 15 seconds, Randy gave him the accurate description of the situation. Great, without giving it any thought, tell me how old your kids are. It took Randy a minute or 2 to think out his response. Abby is 5.5, no, 6.5, and Noah is 5. Randy started to say, interesting. You can remember exactly what you wrote 2 weeks ago, but you had to think about how old your children are. But he changed his mind. Do you think my flower is cute? As they gazed at the crimson rose in the tall crystal vase, he inquired. Looking a little faded, Doc, but red roses are my favorite, she replied. Steve used to bring me home a single red rose every time we had a dispute or he did something extremely stupid. He remained silent the entire time. Those were the days, she murmured, caressing the rose. I'd take one look at those puppy dog eyes of his and after the kids were down for the night we'd make up. That rose belongs to you, Randy, it's not mine. When you weren't present last week, Steve brought it. He told me you would understand the meaning of the rose and that he believed the 2 were getting along. I chose to keep it and hold it for you because he threw it on the table before he went. She picked it up and held it to her nose, much to Randy's surprise, and after a week the stench had almost completely disappeared. How about we go back to last week? For what reason did you skip the session? He inquired. A buddy of mine invited me to a fundraiser for a charity. It was a formal occasion, so in addition to finding a dress, I also needed my hair done. I had to fly out on Thursday to finish it all because it was in New York. I did let your receptionist know last week that I wouldn't be able to make the session. Without taking his eyes off her, he remarked, "That's correct, you did." Did Steve know anything about it? I figured he wouldn't understand, so I didn't bring it up. It was a method of networking with the folks who actually pull the strings, Doc. In my line of work, it's sometimes more important who you know than what you know. Is Tony a friend as well? Doc, just a pal. That's all the times we've gone out to eat and other events when I'm in New York. Is it correct to say that you two are dating? He's simply a friend, we're not in a relationship. God damn it, she exclaimed, growing agitated. Did you discuss Tony or your dinners with him with Steve? He wouldn't have understood that he was just a business friend, someone to have dinner with when I was there by myself. So, you're not sharing a bed with him? Dr. Allen questioned a now angry Randy. You now have Steve's voice. No, I'm not going to bed with him, she stated loudly as she began to fidget on the couch. It's just dinner and maybe a goodnight kiss. That's all. So when Tony said on national television that he'd like to take you on the cruise with him and kissed you on the cheek, it was just Tony being Tony and joking around. Exactly, she answered. Do you believe that the thoughts of all those in attendance were the same? Not to mention your spouse, your parents, and your friends. I've tried to explain it to him, but like I said, he's being stubborn and won't take my calls. After taking a quick peek at his watch and setting down his notepad on the desk, Dr. Allen gave Randy a minute's stare before continuing. For what length of time? For what duration have you been viewing your life via rose-colored glasses? Randy said, Doc, what the heck are you talking about? In a perplexed manner. Randy, you only notice things in your immediate environment in relation to how they impact you. You are clueless about what is going on at home unless it directly impacts you. Did you realize that your hubby has been reading everything you've written up to this point for the first time over the past few weeks? He was astounded by how talented you had gotten. Did you know that this coming weekend, your daughter is going to give you the short tale she wrote? Your spouse typed it up and made the necessary corrections after she wrote it. She said to her class that she wished to follow in her mother's footsteps as a writer. That's my girl, a chip off the old block. Are you aware of her academic standing? What are her grades? Steve says she's doing well. What does Steve say? You ought to know without your spouse informing you, don't you? Hell, when I asked you, you had to consider how old your kids were. Your spouse took 3 seconds to respond to that query. Since he is constantly present, he is aware of everything that occurs. Steve turned down my request to stay at the residence. She spoke in a harsh tone. He told me he didn't want me there if I couldn't be a full-time wife. To put it another way, you were planning to show him, correct? You're going to prove to him that you're capable of more success and financial gain than he is. That someone like him could never comprehend why you wouldn't give up this amazing and thrilling new life that you have. He remarked sarcastically, I see that you don't have on your wedding band. This way, I suppose, you can avoid having to respond awkwardly to inquiries about why a married woman is out on dates while Steve is still wearing his. Everything I've seen, Randy, indicates that you've already moved on from Steve and your family. You're wondering why he's upset because you and your so-called friend embarrassed him in front of a national audience. As she began to cry, I said, Mrs. Moore, remember when I told you a couple of months ago that if you two couldn't come up with 10 good reasons to stay together after 4 months that you'd end up in court? I don't think we need to worry about your appointment for next Thursday. Unfortunately, but sooner rather than later, I believe that's precisely where you're going to wind up. It took 10 minutes for Randy to calm down enough for Dr. Allen to speak with her, and he advised her to attend next week's visit if only to assist her understand what was most likely to happen. Returning to her apartment, she surveyed the space with a critical eye, finding nothing but books, 2 computers, a printer, 3 recently started manuscripts, and her clothes, with no personal belongings or pictures to suggest that she was married with 2 kids. Randy was narrating her story of woe at her parents' place after supper. Her dad and Carol were not sympathetic. You're a huge success and you got what you wanted, sweetie, but it came at a terrible cost. Steve would not let up on you, you were on a mission, and you would not be stopped. He pleaded and begged, but I suppose your fame and reputation were more important to you than him. Her father informed her that since she had been absent from the children's lives for the past 1.5 years, no court in the nation would grant her custody of the children. Instead, Steve would be granted full custody. If Steve isn't so irate that he turns the kids against you, it's your only hope. Although I don't think he would, I wouldn't be so confident after Sunday. I don't want no fucking divorce, Dad. I have not taken any action, yelled Randy. That's the problem, baby girl, you haven't. Randy left me a message on both my work and personal mobile phones, as well as my work email, for the 12th time in 4 days. Her only message was, don't do anything crazy until we have a chance to talk, but like all the others, I deleted it after hearing it. In order to maintain my composure for the sake of my children, I knew I would have to keep it together. Donna was doing better than I had anticipated, and it felt nice to have a little female presence in the house for a change. By Wednesday, I had contacted an attorney and was gathering all my information, including my 401 Kelvin, pay stubs, and what I wanted out of the divorce. Randy was waiting for me in her car as I came into the driveway. Donna yelled at me when I tried to enter the house to see my kids because my key wouldn't fit in the lock. "Hey Randy, good to see you again," I said in a friendly manner. Getting into it in the driveway, where the neighbors may see it, is pointless. Donna is just doing what I've asked her to do. You can't be too careful these days. Come on in, the kids will be happy to see you. And they did. Noah and Abby spent the next 45 minutes obsessing over their mother. They told her everything as quickly as they could, probably out of fear that she would only be there for a short while. I told Donna to go, that I would take care of dinner. The kids now forced Randy to sit at the kitchen table, so I said, "Randy, if you want to stay for dinner, we're having pot roast with all the trimmings." The kids were crazy until I threatened to put them to bed soon after supper if they didn't eat right away. In less than 10 minutes, they had finished and were going after Randy once more. We merely stared at each other while I sat back and said nothing. Randy read the kids one last tale as they went to bed at 8. She simply told them to go to bed when they questioned if they would see her in the morning. With a final kiss and a good-night hug, they were completely out of breath. She came upon me as I was washing the dishes in the kitchen. "Nice kids," she remarked. "Excellent children," I informed her. She began, "Steve, I want to explain about Sunday." "No need, Randy, you can do whatever with whomever you want from now on, I'm done." She retorted, "You're giving up on us." "At about 11:05 Sunday night to be exact," I responded. "Steve, it was a damn joke, that's all. Tony was giving me a hard time because I wouldn't go out with him, that's all. What do you call Sunday night if it wasn't a date? I guess I was technically his date for the night, but my main purpose to be there was to do some networking. My agent said that it was the perfect place to meet the right people, so that's why I was there. And you didn't tell me ahead of time for what reason. Instead, you just let me get blindsided. Can you imagine the looks I got Monday when I went into work? The people who didn't feel sorry for me thought we had an open marriage and that I didn't care if you went off on a cruise with that guy. I'm sorry, Steve, and it seems like I'm saying that every time we meet lately, but it's true. I do love you, it's just that stupid things keep happening to me," she said as she reached for my hand. "And none of it's your fault, right? Who else are you not dating? Who else is going to come out of the woodwork? Randy, as much as I love you, I'm done. I'm just too tired to fight anymore, you wore me down. I'll make the divorce as painless as possible, but I do want the kids in the house. We can split the rest up and don't worry, I won't be asking for anything from you. I don't need or want your damn money," she responded. "You can't divorce me, we have a legal agreement and I'm holding you to it," she replied. "I refuse to allow you to end it because I haven't broken any of the terms." "What's the point, Randy?" I attempted to explain to her that you don't want to be married and tied down, at least not to me, and that we're only delaying the inevitable. "Steve, you have 4 more months to pay me, and that includes weekly counseling. We can part ways after 4 months, and I'll even cover the cost of the divorce if you decide to end things. Until then, we're married for better or worse," she said to me, standing with her arms crossed. "And I expect to have my own key to my own house so I can see my kids when I want to." I told Donna that Randy was allowed full access, but to let me know what was going on. I reluctantly gave her a key. I really didn't have an option because it was her house too. The next Thursday, Dr. Allen said to me, "Steve, I'm glad you came back." "Not my choice, I'm fulfilling an agreement I made, that's all," I replied. "Well, whatever, I'm happy you came. Are you ready to start?" We debated over many of the same issues that we had discussed for the previous 4.5 months for the next 2 months, reaching a few agreements but still a long way from settling the fundamental problems. The kids were in 7th heaven and constantly asking Mom when she was coming home, which turned out to be the million-dollar question. But Randy was now stopping over to the house 3 days a week and spending at least Saturday or Sunday there with the kids. "Randy, do you understand why Steve is expressing a desire for a mother and wife?" A few weeks later, Dr. Allen brought it up. "Steve, how much time would I have for you and the kids if I was still a full-time teacher? May I ask?" she inquired. "Nights and weekends like we had before," answered I. "We always had dinner together and then a few hours to ourselves after we put the kids to bed. I see no distinction between what we were doing and this. 75% of the time, Randy, the kids and I ate by ourselves. Your thoughts were constantly elsewhere when we went anywhere, and our sole communication with the children was through me. Perhaps you were blind to it, but every time I brought it up, you would always get irate or short with me. At last, I just gave up and ceased requesting that you come along. But Steve, I don't work from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Most of the time, there are more than that, but occasionally there are fewer. I try to come up with something from my imagination and put it on paper, so it's not like I'm doing the same thing every day. All right, let's assume that for the time being I get the idea. Who determines your timetable? Who is it publishing, you or the company?" I inquired. "I agree, what's your argument?" The idea here is that you're forcing yourself to publish, 5 novels annually? If you reduced it from 5 to 3, what would happen? My income would be significantly reduced. After the 3rd book, I receive an additional 10%. She told me the 4th one is an additional 10%, and the 5th is 20, and so on. Okay, so how much is Noah worth? 5,000, 10,000. What about Abby, then? In an attempt to illustrate my point, I stated she has to be worth at least 20. Randy, tell me what your priorities are, because that's ultimately what it's all about. Better yet, if it's your career, we'll send you our best wishes and carry on with our lives in your absence. Although I'd be sad to see you go, it's not working for you to be a part of this family when it's convenient for you right now. Steve, that's not fair, she responded. Randy, life isn't fair. It comes down to this: I want a loving wife, and the kids need a mother. I'll find someone who wants the job if you don't. What is the intended meaning of that? Is that a threat of any kind? Mary, I had a great time being your spouse. I miss being intimate, loving, and sharing my life with that someone special. However, it cannot remain as it is presently. You have to decide if you want to commit to it completely or not. I'll never keep the kids from you since you'll always be their mother, but I can't carry on the way we have. So forget about the 2 months that remain on that dreadful contract. Randy and Dr. Allen both ordered me to stop and sit back down, but I said, if you want to take me to court, then great, but I'm not waiting any longer. I slept through Thursday night, and by Friday night, I was pretty much exhausted. The kids went to bed at 9, and I stayed up with them until they woke me up on Saturday morning, wanting food. I told the kids, give me 10 minutes and I'll be downstairs, as I put something on and walked carefully down the stairs. I thought to myself, another long weekend with not much to do, as I reached the corner and spotted Randy enjoying a cup of coffee. She said, I saved you a cup, while taking another sip from her own. I took a cup and took a seat beside her. Kids are watching cartoons, she remarked, gesturing to the 2 small children curled together on the living room floor under a blanket. Why are you out in public at this early hour on a Saturday morning? Afraid of what I was going to hear, I inquired. She said, Steve, I'm sorry, without even glancing at me. It's okay, I didn't think you would give it up, but I hoped anyhow, I replied as I got up to go to the stairs. She added, I'm sorry, but I guess you're going to be stuck with me full-time from now on, as I whirled around, shocked by what I had heard. I said, say that again if you don't mind, believing my brain hadn't picked up on what she'd said. I said, you're stuck with me for better or worse, richer or poorer, and until death us do part, or something like that, she added with a grin. So you'd better get cracking and feed us, because we've got a ton of stuff to move today and tomorrow. I wanted to grab her, kiss her, and drag her upstairs because I was so incredibly thrilled, but my mature brain intervened and forced my feelings back inside. Why do you want to return, Randy? If you're alone in your condo after a night of writing because you miss us, then forget it and remain put. Invest in a dog or cat to keep you company and visit children on the weekends. I never once suggested that you should stop writing. I merely asked that you make time in your hectic schedule for us. Steve, I still want everything, just like I did before. I adore my new life, yet I long for the one I had before. I am aware that we are able to have both. There was only one word that changed from 6 months ago when I would have served her papers and carried on with my life. We can have both. I and me were the only options available to me before today, but now there was we, and I felt that I owed them all one more chance. With her parents' assistance on Sunday afternoon, we were eventually done by Saturday night, having moved roughly 60% of the way. After the kids went to bed on Saturday night, I went in search of Randy and discovered her in our bedroom, lying on the bed with a dried-up rose between her legs. As I tore off my clothing, she grinned and said, now, about that rose you never gave me. Think I can get a rain check on it. After that weekend, was our marriage perfect? Not on your life, but we did establish our priorities. Job comes first, then family. Donna is still with us, which saves a ton of time for both of us, or rather, it provides us time to spend together in the evenings. Randy, on the other hand, is working on a story about a husband who just can't seem to get enough bonding, and somehow last year she managed to get 4 books published. Her research is going better than anticipated, and I hope to give her enough material for her next chapter, or maybe 2, after the kids go to bed tonight. My comment, wasn't at all happy with the OP after she cheated with at least one of her boyfriends twice, making Steve look like an imbecile, or worse. Honestly, she was a self-centered narcissist. Maybe if her husband had hired a PI in New York or showed up doing his own detective work, he would have known if they were kissing on national TV. Her husband would have also seen the evidence what his wife was doing a lot more and secretly.